and there's things that we have shared, him and I, together that people will never know. They're our own moments. And for the fans, all I can say is that as much as you loved him, he loved them even more. His life was music, and he gave everything, his all, to creating music.
Did y'all hear that? There were very few people Prince allowed to get to know him on a personal level, and Sheila E was one of them. Their romance and chemistry was the talk of the 80s. They were engaged, and everyone thought that Prince had finally found his leading lady for once and for all. But almost as soon as it started, their relationship ended. The engagement was called off, and Sheila E left Prince's band and never rejoined it again. And now that she's getting back on track after the shock of his death, Sheila is letting us in on their relationship and why she had no other choice but to leave him, even though she never completely got over him. First of all, Sheila E's claim to fame is not her relationship with Prince, because she's a living legend in her own right. I mean, they don't call her the queen of percussion for nothing. Just like Prince, there's almost no instrument she couldn't play. She's a master of drums and percussion instruments like congos, bongos, and timbales. Then she also knew a thing or two about playing guitars and the keyboard. In addition to that, Miss Sheila is still a great singer and producer. Okay, girl, talk about being an all-arounder. But one of the main reasons why she found her love for music so early was because of her father, Pete Escovedo, who is a legendary percussionist. By her teen, she already knew her way around the drums, and she was working as a drummer for other names like Lionel Richie, Marvin Gaye, Herbie Hancock, and George Duke. Before she and Prince ever met, Sheila E admitted that she already had a bit of a crush on Prince when she walked into a record store and saw a poster of him on the wall. This was after the first record he dropped, and the first thing that came to her mind when she saw this poster was that he was beautiful. She immediately bought the record, and a friend who had seen her reaction gave her the poster as a freebie, and she still has that poster to this day. And as fate would have it, the two of them met while Sheila E came to one of his shows in San Francisco. She went backstage to meet him and was surprised to see him wearing a trench coat with leg warmers and underwear, with his long flowing hair taking up a lot of attention. But she still approached him, and before she could even introduce herself, Prince said, "I know who you are. I've been following your career for a long time. You're an amazing drummer and percussionist." The two of them exchanged numbers, and that was the start of a lifelong friendship.
Yeah. Yes, he was very funny. He had a great sense of humor, and I don't know, we just did a lot of things together. Went to the movies. We played love sports, so we always played, basketball, ping pong, pool. We did a lot of things that, people do, and whatever normal might be.
They bonded over their love for music, their musical families, that fire they both had for their craft, and it was the start of something big, y'all. From there, their relationship took off like a rocket, and Prince would swing by her house to jam with her and her brothers, and would always tell Sheila that she didn't know how lucky she was to have a family who could create music just like that. Sheila would also put him onto Latin rhythms and artists, which started sneaking into his own tracks. But even though they had a pretty good friendship, Prince had made it clear that he didn't want to just be friends with old Sheila. He was into Sheila E. He started sending her flowers, gift, the whole 9 yards, and the intent was to keep her in his life.
Well, we both loved a lot of the same music, the same artist, and we were both very competitive. We liked a lot of the same things, and we figured out, we became friends very quickly when we first met. He hadn't been following my career, and we just liked a lot of the same things, and we were able to, sit in a room or at the studio and record for hours on end, even days at a time, and just have fun.
When she wanted to move on from being a drummer to a solo artist, Prince was right there supporting her all the way. He was the one who suggested that she shorten her name from Sheila Escovedo to Sheila E. When the 1980s hit, she exploded onto the scene with her debut solo project, The Glamorous Life, and Sheila really hit the ground running with that one. It spent 2 weeks at #1 on the Billboard's Dance Club Song charts, and the song got her a nomination for Best New Artist at the Grammys that year. Plus, she also got another nod for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. And do y'all want to know what makes the song so special? It was written and co-produced by Prince. At first, he wanted to give it to Apollonia 6, but he later gave it to her and then she got credit for it because he thought it was a perfect fit for her. She was the opener on the Purple Rain tour and then went on to open up for Lionel Richie. She also starred in the Crush Groove movie and later got her own 2-month tour in Europe. By the time she was done with everything, Sheila had already felt drained. She dropped 3 albums in 3 years: The Glamorous Life, Romance 1600, and Sheila E. And all that nonstop touring and promo had drained her. The successful release of Glamorous Life and her other albums made her so famous she couldn't even go to the store or anywhere else without people recognizing her and swarming her. She really needed to step out of the spotlight and just play. And as always, Prince was there for her. He was gearing up for his Sign O' the Times tour and wanted her as his drummer and singer in his Revolution band. Sheila was like, I bet, and jumped right in. That was the perfect move. Less pressure, more music. And while they were on the road, things started heating up, y'all. All those hours rehearsing, performing, and traveling together pulled them in closer. At that time, Sheila E. had already been heartbroken after she dated musician Carlos Santana and found out that he was married to Deborah King.
Next thing I know, I found out he was married, and I was devastated. You know, I wouldn't have gotten involved with him had I known.
So this time around, she wanted to keep her personal life and professional life separate and didn't want to be known as one of those girls that came and went out of Prince's life. Yet their chemistry was undeniable. Like, how do you ignore someone who gets you and who makes you feel like the most important person in the room when you're together? And that was the start of what was going to be a lifelong relationship for the both of them. They were a dynamic duo on stage. Sheila's mastery over instruments pushed Prince to give it his all as well. The chemistry was off the charts, and it showed up in everything they did.
We were always, trying to... The thing about, I was just saying earlier, is that there were no limits to us creating in the studio like we're in the studio right now. There are no limits. The limits that we have is what we put on ourselves. So in order to create and be different and be inspired as well, is that to try things you've never tried before. Well, let's try this mic on the kick drum or the snare, or let's sing a vocal in a kick drum mic. Let's change the sound. That there are no rules. Every day you come into the studio, you're just creating. It's like, oh, here's another idea. Here's another idea.
So the thing with Prince is that he acted on what he was feeling right then and there. During the Sign O' the Times tour, they were playing the song Purple Rain when Sheila E. and Prince locked eyes with each other right in the middle of the song. Then he mouthed the words, "Marry me," and Sheila immediately agreed because she was head over heels for him at that point and really thought that they were going to do life together.
I was playing Purple Rain, one of my favorite songs. I looked at him at the same time he looked at me, and he asked me to marry him at that exact moment.
But you know what? As much as Prince loved her and she adored him, her worst fears started to be realized. Sheila found out that Prince was seeing another woman, Susanna Melvoin, at the same time he was with her. And yes, he was doing the same thing that Carlos Santana did that broke her heart. And she knew she couldn't stay, so she made the tough call to end the relationship. She also found it difficult to remain in the band, and the new music that Prince was writing just didn't feel right to her because it seemed like the two of them couldn't get on the same page when it came to melodies and lyrics. So towards the end of the Love Sexy tour, Sheila decided that her time with Prince, both professionally and personally, had officially come to an end, and she left the group.
I don't know, I just think, when we were working together 24/7, we were always together, and it was a good and a bad thing. And I think after a while, I started to feel like musically where he was going, I didn't want to be anymore. And that kind of, made it so I didn't want to be around the music. I didn't want to record
Where
the
was
music.
he going?
It was just a lot of cursing, more so than he was before, and just the direction was not as musical as I wanted it to be. And I just felt like it was time for me to leave. It was a different time.
But here's where it gets interesting. While their breakup felt very much like a divorce and was very painful for Sheila, she and Prince never really cut ties. She was always in his life one way or another, and Prince never fully let her go either. She was his muse and remained so long after. She would often come to play the drums for Prince or work on some music with him, but she never stayed too long again to rekindle what they once had. Even if they weren't together as a couple, to most people, they were one of those relationships where the person will always be a part of your life, no matter what they do or where you are in life. In fact, Sheila wrote a book about her life called The Beat of My Own Drum, and a big part of that book was her relationship with Prince and how they always seemed to have each other's back whenever either of them needed someone to rely on. And when Prince unfortunately passed away in 2016, it shattered Sheila. She was mad. Mad he was gone, mad she couldn't have saved him, and she had last worked with him in 2011, and he was this larger-than-life big personality who she always thought would just live on forever, and then suddenly, he was gone. And there was nothing that she could have done to prepare her for that. But till this day, Sheila E. has always done whatever she could to keep his story and legacy alive. She was a part of the Grammys tribute to Prince and recently performed Let's Go Crazy with John Legend. And she also has never shied away from giving interviews and always painted Prince in the best light. And even though their relationship ended long ago and Prince is now gone, people are still convinced that the two of them will always be soulmates. Don't y'all disrespect Prince by asking who Sheila E. is. She is the only one I know for a fact Prince would have wanted to do his tribute. Sheila E. will always be Prince's ultimate muse. Sheila E. and Prince never got married or had children, but the union they did share gave birth to decades of great music. So many hours of other recordings they did that no one has ever even heard. But do y'all remember Prince and Sheila E.'s relationship, and do you think that they were meant to be together? Share your thoughts in the comments and make sure you like and subscribe because there is more coming down the pipeline. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, baddies.